So this is the effective executive axiom number 4, and this one I'm going to talk about. Maybe this should be number 1, but that the system is greater than or more important than the individual. Now, there's some qualifications to this, and I've found that in the larger systems that this is mostly true. A 5-person business, you've got to have everybody being high performers in order for the business to survive. It's one of the reasons why we should all admire what entrepreneurs do in developing their business with such small numbers. But when we start to get to something that there's an episode that I did on Dunbar's number, which is that you can have 150 relationships with people and still have some type of social connection to them. But once you get beyond 150, then it gets really hard. And so I've always taken this number and noticed that in organizations that I've worked with, that the complexity increases as the relationships get a little bit more difficult to manage in an organization. So the 150 number is one that where this complexity, this breakdown in relationships starts. And so it requires more in these large organizations of the system that you're working in and less about the individual in provisioning quality services and goods. And, one of the illustrations of this was Dr. Deming's use of an orchestra. We can't have, 150 to 250 person orchestra with a bunch of prima donnas out there all trying to play their own solo or aria, or it just doesn't sound pleasing to the ear. So there's this massive coordination that has to go on with an orchestra in order to get it to play music that is pleasing to the ear, quite frankly. And, it's just the requirements of organizations get more complex as you move through from that entrepreneurial phase and start to grow into an organization. That's why many times entrepreneurs don't make it with the company, once it starts to grow into large numbers, because it's a whole different management style. It's a whole different way of doing things. And entrepreneurs often just like to be entrepreneurs. Making an organization act like an entrepreneurial organization is always something that is aspiring to do, but but rarely accomplished. So, one of the things that you always find is HR will talk about they're going to find talent. They're going to find the best talent and things of that sort. Now, the fact that I'm talking about HR tells you I'm not talking about a 5-person organization. And I'd submit that even up to 150, you'd be hard pressed to find much in the way of HR in these organizations. But they start to show up as the organization grows. But management, and especially executive management's responsibilities for the system, and they need to be able to learn about a system and the complexities of a system in order to make it run better, and more importantly, their own system. So this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge advocate of university programs. Is they take you through case studies, and it might be interesting to find out what Dole did, with their pineapples, and it might be interesting to see what national parks do and those types of things in case studies. But the way I teach systemic thinking or synthetic thinking is through your own system. In other words, by virtue of studying your own system, you will learn everything you need in order to become a competent uh, synthetic thinker. And you know, it's it's HR that alludes to things like non-performers, high performers, average performers, and just taking a look at this graph here, you can see this bell curve of people, and it kind of fits, the Jack Welch model, if you will. You're going to have 10% non to low performers, and you're going to have your below average, your above average, and you're going to have your high performers, and they say it's 20%. I don't know where that number comes from, but fine. And so the mentality often of executive management and HR is, well, let's go out and hire all these high performers. Now, that would make sense in a 5-person organization, but in a 150 or 1,000-person organization, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so these are different aims associated with what they're trying to accomplish. So, in larger systems, what we're trying to do is take this bell curve and we're trying to shift it off here to the right. And just a small movement of that entire curve would take massive amounts of high performers in order to achieve it. So just a small bit of movement in this bell curve, for everyone to participate in working in a better system would easily negate what 10 or 20% of high performers could do. And large organizations, this is what you're trying to achieve, and this is the benefit of developing your synthetic thinking skills within your organization, especially with your executives, but really throughout the entire organization. And so when we start to think about the system being greater than individual, this is what I'm talking about. The movement of this entire bell curve to performing better through the development of better systems, better management, better IT systems, better not only individuals, but the policies and the procedures and how you go about developing those things are all participants in how this entire system runs. And development of that is really the most important thing that any executive can do. And obviously, this is really the basis of everything that the 95 method accomplishes by virtue of going through the training, and all of the, my advisory services are associated with how do I develop the synthetic thinking skills of executives. So, the 95 method, it develops you, the veteran, new, or aspiring executive, to learn how to shift this entire curve to the right rather than going out and seeking the unicorn high performer within the organization. And there's the saying of how good is the system that you're working in will determine the performance of your entire organization. And to blame something on an individual then comes into play here too. But you learn through the study of your own system and using the 95 method, your own company. By studying that, you don't go out and read about Dole or the National Park Service or in manufacturing, if you're in service or anything like that. It's about learning how to study your own system. And of course, I began doing that customer in organizations. So that's the fourth axiom, that the system is always greater than the individual. And that's what I wanted to cover in this this axiom, and remember, there is always a better way.